My name is Michael Hart, 42 years old. Architect. A man who spent most of his life building homes for other people, while never truly having one of his own. I wasn't running from anything, not exactly. But I wasn't running toward anything either. Work had consumed me. Friends drifted away. My days blended into each other like pages stuck together by time and exhaustion. So, when the panic attacks started, quiet ones, the kind you hide, my doctor told me I needed a break. A long one, he said. Somewhere far, with no deadlines and no noise. So, I did something uncharacteristic. I packed a single suitcase, turned off my phone, and left for a remote coastal town I found online. A place called North Haven, at the far northern tip of the country. Population: 2,046. Just ocean, cliffs, and endless wind. I didn't expect anything there. Certainly not her. But life has a strange way of giving you exactly what you never knew you needed, just when you stop trying to control everything. North Haven looked like time had forgotten it. Wooden docks, fishing boats rocking on cold gray waves, small houses with chimneys always breathing smoke. And then there was her. I first saw her standing on the edge of a cliff. Literally at the edge of the world. Hair whipping in the wind, wearing a long gray sweater, staring at the ocean like she was reading something written only for her. She didn't notice me, or maybe she did and pretended not to. The locals spoke about her in fragments. That's Lena. She moved here 5 years ago. Writes books. Keeps to herself. Kind, but private. I had no intention of intruding. But life had its own plans. The next morning, I walked into a tiny seaside cafe, and there she was, sitting alone, writing in a notebook, drinking tea that steamed in the cold air. I wasn't looking for a connection. Not there, not then. But when she looked up, our eyes met, just for a second, and something inside my chest shifted. She held my gaze calmly, as if she already knew me. "First time in North Haven?" she asked. Her voice was soft, like the ocean on a calm day. And somehow, that simple question opened the first door in a long corridor I didn't know I was about to walk down. We started talking, small things at first. The town, the weather, the ocean, books, her writing, my burnout. She listened without rushing me, without judgment, just quiet presence. And in that presence, my guard began to fall. Over the next weeks, we walked the cliffs together, watched storms roll in, shared pastries from the bakery that opened only 3 days a week. She taught me how to breathe in the quiet, how to exist without performing, how to feel without fearing the weight of feeling. One evening, we stood on the pier watching the sun disappear behind thick clouds. "You look lighter," she said. "Maybe I am," I replied. "Good," she said softly. "Sometimes we forget how much life can carry for us if we let it." I didn't know what to say. But her words stayed with me, like the echo of something important. The closer we grew, the more I sensed something. Lena carried her own heaviness, not visible but present. A quiet shadow behind her eyes. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace in her small cottage, she finally told me her truth. She had once been engaged. They had bought a house together, planned a life. Everything looked perfect, but he died in an accident. Sudden, unfair, a blow that cracked the world she had built. North Haven wasn't a fresh start, it was an escape. A place to vanish just enough to keep breathing. "I didn't come here to live," she whispered. "I came here not to drown." I didn't speak. I simply reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Sometimes two broken paths meet in exactly the way they're meant to. Love didn't come suddenly. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't wild. It came like early sunlight. Slow, soft, steady, a gentle warmth between moments. Her falling asleep on my shoulder during a storm. Our hands brushing while walking. Her laughter filling the cold air. The way she looked at me like she was memorizing me without trying. One evening, after a long walk, she stopped in the middle of the road, turned to me, and said, "Michael, I think I'm not afraid to live anymore." And then, she stepped closer, gently touched my face, and kissed me. Not a passionate, desperate kiss. A quiet one. A beginning. The kind that rewrites a life from the inside out. We settled into something real. Something slow. Something healing. Cooking dinners in her tiny kitchen. Her writing while I built a small workbench for myself in the shed. Nights wrapped in blankets listening to the ocean. Days filled with a peace I never knew existed. But the rest of our story, the next hour and a half, contains everything. The crisis that almost tore us apart. The moment she disappeared without telling me why. The trip that changed everything. The truth she finally revealed. The decision we had to make. And the ending. The one filled with light. Winter arrived in North Haven like a living thing. Heavy, quiet, demanding. Snow piled against windows. Winds tore through the empty streets. The ocean turned dark, restless, almost violent. But inside Lena's cottage, life finally felt warm. We spent evenings on the floor with blankets wrapped around us. I read drafts of her new book. She laughed at my terrible cooking attempts. Sometimes she would fall asleep on my shoulder, her breath soft, her hand unconsciously holding onto my sleeve as if making sure I wouldn't disappear. And then, one night, after we finished washing dishes, she leaned against the counter, looked at me with this soft vulnerability, and whispered, "Michael, I think I'm ready for more." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. I just stepped closer and kissed her. That night changed something between us. We were no longer two lonely souls trying to learn how to breathe. We became a we. A beginning of a home. But life, as always, wasn't finished testing us. One morning, in the midst of a snowstorm, Lena opened the mailbox outside her cottage. There was only one envelope inside, plain, white, with handwriting that froze her in place. I saw her expression change. Fear, shock, pain. She hid the letter in her coat pocket. Didn't open it in front of me. Didn't say a word. Over the next days, something in her shifted. She still smiled, but lightly, like the smile wasn't connected to her heart. She still talked, but carefully, choosing words that said nothing real. And at night, when she thought I was asleep, I felt her quietly crying beside me. I didn't push, not then. Love sometimes means staying close without demanding answers. But the distance between us grew, like a thin sheet of ice forming on a lake. It was early morning when I woke up to an empty bed. The house was silent, colder than usual. The front door was unlocked. Snow blew inside, forming a small drift on the floor. She was gone. No note, no message, no explanation, just absence, heavy and sudden. I searched the entire town. Asked in the cafe, the bakery, the library. Everyone said the same thing. She left early. Didn't say where. Hours turned into a full day. Fear turned into a cold kind of panic. By evening, I returned to her house. That's when I saw it. The unopened letter, lying on the table. I picked it up. My hands shook. It was from her late fiancé's mother. I took a deep breath, sat down, and opened it. The letter wasn't cruel. That made it worse. It was kind, soft, full of memories. It talked about Lena's former fiancé, Adam. His childhood. His dreams. How much he loved her. How he'd been planning to propose the night he died. And at the end, I know you tried to start a new life. Please don't forget you will always be family to us. Come visit if you can. We miss you. There was no accusation, no guilt, no pressure, but I understood. She wasn't running from me. She was running from the weight of a life she hadn't fully closed. A life she still felt she was betraying by moving on. And she didn't know how to tell me. A storm hit the town that night, the worst one in years. Roads closed. Power lines snapped. The ocean roared like a living creature. I realized the cliffs were the only place she would go. I grabbed my coat, flashlight, and climbed through knee-deep snow toward the sound of the waves crashing below. The wind tore at my clothes. Cold burned my skin, but I kept going. Halfway up the cliff path, I saw her, standing near the edge, covered in snow, shivering, tears mixing with the freezing wind. She turned when she heard me. Her voice was broken. Michael, I don't know how to love you without feeling like I'm betraying someone I lost. I walked toward her slowly, carefully, until we were only inches apart. Lena, I said, loving me isn't forgetting him. It's living again, and he would want that more than anything. She fell into my arms. And I held her, letting her cry against my chest, winds howling around us like the world itself was exhaling. After that night, things weren't magically perfect. But they were real. She talked more. I listened more. We rebuilt slowly, stronger, steadier, with truth at the center. She allowed herself to laugh again, to write again, to let herself want a future, not a memory. One evening, weeks after the storm, she took my hand and said, I don't know what love is supposed to look like now, but I want to learn it with you. And that moment was the beginning of the rest of our lives. I didn't remember falling asleep, but when my eyes opened, the first thing I felt was warmth. Not sunlight, her warmth. Emily was asleep on my chest, her breath soft, her hand resting exactly where my heartbeat was. For a moment, I didn't move. I didn't dare. It felt like if I even breathed too loudly, the universe might wake up and remember that I didn't deserve this kind of peace. But she held on to me. Like deep down she knew I wasn't going anywhere. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. She didn't wake up, she just smiled. And that single, unconscious smile did something to me. It made me realize I'd spent my whole life mistaking noise for happiness. Work, success, motion, all of it, but real happiness, it was quiet, small, warm, like this. She finally stirred, her voice still sleepy. Are you watching me again? I laughed softly, only because you look peaceful. Like someone who's finally safe. Her eyes opened, slow, gentle, shining with something I didn't yet have a name for. I haven't felt safe in a long time, she whispered. Until now. I wasn't prepared for the way that hit me. But the truth in her voice was unmistakable. We stayed like that for a while, wrapped in silence that didn't feel empty. More like, it finally had room for both of us. Eventually, she sat up, pulled her sweater over her shoulder, and looked at me with a seriousness that made my chest tighten. Daniel, yesterday was overwhelming. Good, but overwhelming. I know, I said. And I meant it. You didn't scare me, she clarified quickly. You just opened doors inside me I thought were locked forever. I reached for her hand, not to hold it, just to let her know I was there. Emily, we can go slow. As slow as you need. But she shook her head with a small, almost embarrassed smile. I don't think I want slow. I just want honest. That, I could do. Honesty was a language I had spent years learning the hard way. So I told her everything. About my failed engagement, the loneliness I buried under work, the fear that maybe I wasn't built for love after all. She listened, really listened, like my words were something fragile she didn't want to break. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said, "Daniel, you're not broken. You're just waiting for the right person to understand you. And you think that's you?" I asked, half teasing, half terrified. She didn't flinch. "I know it's me. There are moments you feel your life changing in real time. That was one of them. Because for the first time in years, I let someone see all of me, and she didn't run. Instead, she leaned forward, cupped my face in her hands, and kissed me in a way that felt like a promise. Slow, sure, certain. When we finally pulled away, she whispered, "Can we spend the day together? Just us? No past, no future. Just today." I nodded. "Yeah, we can do that." But I didn't know then that today would become the day everything truly shifted. That this one quiet morning would turn into the beginning of a love that would change both of our lives forever. Because neither of us knew what waited outside my door, or how deeply it would test the fragile, beautiful thing we had just started building. But that's the thing about love. It doesn't grow in perfect moments. It grows in the moments that threaten to break you. And ours was just getting started. We spent the rest of that day walking through the city like two people who suddenly remembered what it felt like to breathe. No hurry, no masks, no pretending that life didn't scare us sometimes. She held my hand everywhere we went, not because she needed support, but because she wanted to feel connected. Like she didn't want even a second of distance between us. We stopped at a small cafe on the corner of 5th and Maple, the kind of place that smells like cinnamon and old wooden tables. Emily dipped her spoon in the foam of her latte and said quietly, "Daniel, I think I'm falling for you." She said it like an apology, like something she shouldn't admit. I reached for her hand across the table. "You don't have to be afraid of that," I told her. She laughed nervously. "I'm not afraid of falling. I'm afraid of losing." I squeezed her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." And for the first time, she believed me. I could see it in her eyes. But life has a strange way of testing every promise you make. That night, after I walked her home, she paused at her door. The hallway was dim, quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you notice how fast your heart is beating. She looked up at me with something heavy in her gaze. "Daniel, before you go, there's something I need to show you." She stepped inside and motioned for me to follow. On her dining table were papers, some neat, some scattered, some marked with highlighted lines. Medical forms, test results, appointment dates. My heartbeat slowed, not because I understood, but because I didn't. She swallowed hard. "I wasn't ready to tell you. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to scare you." She took a shaky breath. "But I have a condition. Something chronic. Something I'll be dealing with my whole life." She waited for me to react. Maybe to pull away. Maybe to excuse myself and never come back. Instead, I stepped closer. "Emily, did you think this would change the way I see you?" Her voice cracked. Everyone I've told before eventually left. Then I understood the walls. The fear. The way she held love like a fragile bird afraid of its own wings. I took the papers gently, set them aside, and wrapped my arms around her. "I'm not everyone," I whispered into her hair. "And I'm not leaving." She cried into my chest, not because she was weak, but because she finally realized she didn't have to pretend to be strong. Weeks turned into months. Hospital visits, checkups, good days, hard days, Days when she was full of light. Days when she could barely get out of bed. And I was there for all of it. Not because I was a hero. Not because I felt obligated. But because loving her wasn't something I did. It was something I was. Her smile returned. Her confidence. Her laughter. The kind that filled a room and made people turn their heads. She started painting again. She started dreaming again. She started building a life again. One evening, while we sat on the same bridge where we first met, under that flickering street lamp, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Daniel," she said softly, "I think you saved me." I shook my head. "No, you saved yourself. I just reminded you how strong you are." Then she looked at me with eyes full of tomorrow. "Then let me say it differently." She took my hand. "You changed my life." I kissed her forehead. "And you changed mine." The city around us hummed with noise, cars, distant music, late-night conversations, the world moving fast as always. But in that moment, everything slowed down. Everything made sense. A year later, on a quiet morning in spring, I drove her back to that same cafe where she first told me she was falling for me. She didn't know why we were there. She didn't know what was coming. She only knew I couldn't stop smiling. We sat at our usual table, and before she could take her first sip, I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a small velvet box on the table. Her breath caught. Her hand trembled. Her eyes filled instantly. "Daniel," she whispered. I opened it slowly, not for show, but because moments like these deserve time. Inside was a simple ring. Not expensive, not flashy, just honest. Like everything between us. "Emily," I said, "I don't know where life will take us. I don't know what challenges we'll face. But I know this. I want every step, every sunrise, every difficult day and every beautiful one, with you." Her tears fell, quietly, beautifully. "Yes," she said, "no hesitation, no fear, just love, pure, real, steady." She threw her arms around me, laughing and crying at the same time. We weren't perfect. We weren't a movie. We were two people who found each other in the middle of a world full of noise and decided to stay. But that was enough to make everything feel miraculous. And that is how a quiet meeting on a bridge at 2 a.m. turned into a lifetime. A love that didn't save us, but transformed us. A love that didn't fix our wounds, but healed them. A love that began unexpectedly and never ended. Our story didn't finish that day. It started, and it's still going. Every single morning, every single breath,